I'm Addison, Brasil. Grief Club, the podcast, starts now. Welcome back to another episode of Grief Club, the podcast, where I take parts of my book, First Year of Grief Club, A Gift from a Friend Who Gets It, and use them as launching points for deeper conversations with experts and friends. Today, we have a very special guest. He's actually a member of my own personal grief club, has helped me get through the worst of the worst. He's an expert and a friend, our favorite double whammy. Welcome to the show, Drew Newkirk.
Hey, bud.
Hey, bud. All right.
I tried so hard not to laugh through that whole thing. You said it's so serious.
You know what? Part of your friends who get it that sometimes you have to act professional.
Uh-huh.
All right, before we get
I
wild, I'm going to try to stick to the format today. That may not happen, guys, because Drew and I are very close and carry on like brothers, but we're going to try. So to start, let's take a deep breath and let's do a check-in with Drew. Drew, in one word, how are you feeling physically right now?
Oh, awkward.
Amped. It's going to be mine. In one word, how are
Three
you?
pillows behind me. I'm trying to make sure I look good in the camera. Go on.
In one word, how are you feeling emotionally?
Unsentimentally hyphen sentimental.
Bromantic is what I'm going to say. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I just glow whenever one of my bromances is my guest. We're doing really bad at one-word check-ins. Finally, in one word, how are you feeling mentally?
Optimistic.
Love that. And I'm going to say interested because I'm interested where this is going to go. All right. We are checked in. So this cut on a few episodes ago. I just thought it was fun and it puts the guests on the feet. I'm going to have you start off by helping us get to know you by building an acrostic poem using the letters of your name. So we'll go with Drew, and for each letter, describe yourself on the spot and build our listeners an acrostic poem for Drew.
What is it? What kind of poem?
Acrostic, like D is for daring, R is for...
Yeah. When I said optimistic about how I'm feeling mentally, and now I have no idea what that word means. So I'm now feeling quite pessimistic. D. Fuck. I'm gonna like to go with devastating. Bringing that heat. R. Ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
E. Engulfing. W. Bring in that whammy at the end. Damn.
Whammy. Okay, so apparently I'll start to tell people in the what an acrostic poem is. I don't know if that's a known thing or not. I just knew it was the easiest type of poem. Anytime in English when you were young, they asked you to write a poem, you could be like,
Was I supposed to just pick a word for each letter, or
you could do whatever you wanted if you wanted to go into it. I'm
gonna say something. I just think you should lose whatever you just did there. Let's lose that.
All right, and we already have notes.
Grieve the acrostic poem because, I appreciate you, but that is a stretch.
Well, listeners, you let me know if we need to grieve the acrostic poem. It's interesting what comes up on the spot and the words that people use. Also, like devastating, ruthless, and whammy. I want to know who this guy is now.
I picked engulfing too.
I need to know more. And engulfing. Yeah. I need to know more, which is great because the next part of the show is where I give you a few minutes, buddy, to honor your journey. And I know we're having fun here. This is a few minutes for you to say whatever you want to say about how you show up in the world the way you do today. It can include grief. It doesn't have to. Most people do, given the title of the show. But yeah, just what help us honor your journey. Let's hear from you.
Wow. I like the open-endedness. It's also a little intimidating. I think that I'd say if I had to put my purpose down in a sentence, which I've done, so I'm going to do, it would be to help people understand things about themselves they didn't know they wanted to know. So I'm a therapist by trade, but I think that line is core to who I've been even as a kid. And when I found my purpose to help people professionally, it kind of linked this thing that I think I had early on, which was to take conversations deeper, to be a bit bold conversationally, that there was some kind of boundary between what is normal and what's expected and what I just inherently did as a young boy. And I think as things happen, that got stifled quite a bit early on. And when I started going to therapy at 23 as a client, it started to really manifest in a much more powerful, honed, and harnessed way, that I saw a future in which I can start pulling from people threads that other people weren't having as easy a time getting at, that can challenge them to not only deal with their shit, grieve things, but then open up to what might also be inherent in them, their possibilities, their gifts, their strengths. And so, about 6 months into getting therapy, I decided to go back to grad school. And it's interesting because I think we're going to talk about music a little bit. I was thinking about this today, that there was a song that I heard. I was at my parents' house. I was 23, and I was in a sales gig in Manhattan. I was selling tchotchkes, anything that you have your logo on, a company has their logo on. I was selling that shit. It's unfathomable to me that was my thing, because it didn't really fit with how I was oriented. But I guess also I didn't know what the next steps were. I was a history major in college, but I didn't want to be a professor. And I just fell into this gig. And one of the things that therapy opened me up to was this idea that I could help people. So I was in bed thinking about going back to grad school, knew it would be hard. You never know if this is the right next path. And I heard this song, and it was from this band, I think they're Swedish, called Kent. And most of the music is actually sung in Swedish, but they do have a couple English speaking songs. And one of the songs is called Before It All Ends. And the chorus has this refrain which just said, "Are you happy now? Are you happy now? Are you happy now?" And I knew I wouldn't be in most careers, but that I could be if I was talking at the deepest levels about the deepest things and serving that kind of intensity that I had within me. Maybe I used those words before, like devastating and ruthless and engulfing and whammy. That was a weird choice. But because there is an intense human that needed to live at a higher frequency. And what better frequency than to talk about the deepest stuff in your life for a living? So that's what I do. I think how we know each other is that we're constant seekers, and we were down in Mexico seeking just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And I think at this point in my life, I'm midway through the first decade of my second half of life. So I'm about to turn 45. And the jumps aren't as big. The emotional and maturity jumps aren't as big. So it's really about fine tuning and finding those real intricate spots to dig into. And now I think that I have 20 years of experience as a therapist to get at those in my own life. So I have friends like you, my own therapist, and books and the things I'm working on to get deeper and deeper into that stuff, which is, it's just, and it just comes second nature to me, and I love it.
I love that.
Is that enough?
Yeah, that's more than enough. And I like just realizing now that we're doing it this year. You're doing 45, I'm doing 35. We're exactly a decade apart. I don't know if I knew that. That's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And because that's so interesting to people who
Wait
are
till you get
listening.
to where I'm at. It's so awesome.
Honestly, I'm looking forward to that, and then dropping into that bottom of the U curve of happiness at 47, just hitting
Wow,
rock bottom,
right?
according to science. Hopefully, those with intense grief processes, the U shifts a little bit. Um, Okay, I'm gonna paint this picture for you. You're in the West Village, you're like brooding, your tats are showing, and a kid who walks up to you and was like, I heard my dad say the word grief. What does that mean? How do you explain it to this kid?
Yeah, I love this. So I think grief is tricky, but also mandatory. And it's a machine. It is never not on. From the most ordinary things in life to the most extremes, grief is constantly being cycled through. So it to me is a self-development machine, and it's less of an emotion and more of a rule. And the rule is, if you're going to grow, if you're going to mature and develop, you have to have some kind of awareness of how this thing works, because there's all these intricate components to it. And as you get that understanding, you can take the most brave and ambitious moves towards it with the biggest losses, and then honor the ordinary stuff in life, because it's also just, it's there for you. The unfortunate thing about it is the folks who actually delve into it, those who develop and apply that skill set, I'd actually say, that's required of learning about yourself through loss. They broaden their emotional bandwidth. And what happens is they actually separate themselves from the people who don't. And the gap can get so big that you find yourself sometimes isolated and having to find and meet new people who have done the same work also.
Wow. I loved that. And I think everyone listening to this is going to love that. But the comedian in me is like, could you imagine this 4-year-old child?
Oh,
When
wait,
you
wait,
start
it
with
was
the word
four?
mandatory and
Sorry.
machine, he's like, wait, it's a car?
I didn't really listen to your question. That's
I
pretty
just
true of
no,
everything that
I'm
happens
glad
with
you did
us.
it because I much prefer for the people listening to this that
Uh,
definition because it was so wild. But there's just a part of me that had to do the callback to like this child walking
yeah,
up to you in the West Village, and you're like, listen, kid. And for anyone listening, I honestly think that's how you would talk to a 4-year-old child, especially on your
I'm
own time, sitting on a stoop. I think that's exactly how that would happen.
engulfing,
Yeah.
engulfing.
He's just like, listen, kid, I'm about to whammy you, whatever that means. And just lays grief on this kid for the rest of
Wow.
his life.
Yeah. Uh, now here's the thing, Addison. The unfortunate part, and I think that this is shifting now, but for myself and my peers, and probably your generation as well, I don't remember ever being taught practically how to work through this and what the components are, to the point that when I talk to any adult who's my age or over, and I ask them what grief is, and they don't have, they haven't been in therapy, or they haven't done some of the work, they instinctively say sadness, and they're not aware of the layers and layers that are embedded in grief.
Hmm.
And it's an unfortunate thing. I just went to my brother's son's fourth grade class to teach them about what a therapist does. And the fascinating thing is, 1/3 of them was in therapy. They were talking to me more accurately and with more depth than a lot of adults do about emotional intelligence.
Wow.
And I was blown away, um,
That's
that
amazing.
it was amazing. Now, I don't know that he's in a normal class. He's a pretty special kid, but there was so much hope that I had. And the teacher was, I could see her taking them through some very specific emotional maturity kind of development skills that were connected straight on to grief. So I think it's changing, but
Yeah.
wow, that
Wow.
4 year
Hearing
old,
that really feeds my hope monster. That's really cool.
I think you should, yeah, let that thing be fed.
Let that thing be fed. I mean, I always do this. And if anyone's kids are listening, turn this off. But this is like sort of one of my bits with my mom who like as we know, just aced it in terms of parenting, especially as such a young parenting and unconditional love and all that stuff as the preface. But like, I take her aside and I'm like, so wait, you thought it was necessary to sit me down and tell me about Santa and the Easter Bunny and like break my heart about the Tooth Fairy? Like, all these things are monumental conversations where I had to be sat down and like seriously told about these things, which we already knew from the schoolyard were whatever they were. I'm still trying to protect the kids. I don't want to ruin anybody's beliefs. But like, I was like, but you never told me that everybody I know is going to die one day and we're going to have to work through that. Like, what?
Mm.
Even like, and my mom, again, just all love, like, was terrible. Every pet went to a farm or was replaced, or like it was meticulously, like, I swear, like it was like loss was purposely. But then we'd have like these deep, meaningful conversations about something, you know, like all our little traditions year round. And I'm like, yeah, mom, I know a giant bunny wasn't bringing me construction paper and scissors because I'm an office supply kleptomaniac. And while my siblings got chocolate, I would get office supplies at Easter.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
she might have been holding that back from you because she knew that you might not be the right person at the right time to be playing with that kind of concept.
Or maybe someone might argue that that is the earliest way to deal with grief with those figures. I don't know. Maybe you have to,
I
I
think
guess,
so.
I guess you have to grieve that.
You've reached Grief Club. Leave a message after the beep.
Hey, Grief Club, it's Addy. Yeah, I am back talking during the ad, which should be your well-deserved break from listening to me talk, but we know sometimes that's not how it works. I just wanted to say, if you are really enjoying this, if you are feeling connected, a little less isolated and going, I only get this once a week. How can I stay connected throughout the rest of the week? The answer is social media. Now, remember, when you're using social media, we want to use conscious consumption, and that's what I always promise at Share My Grief Club. I'll put it in the show notes. Anything that I don't create, I consciously curate, and it's all designed to help people on their way to honor their journey, and if all else fails, find the funny. We'll see you there. The
That and
magic.
animals.
I'm going to keep the
Yeah,
magic
animals
forever.
line.
Speaking of magic, let's talk about music and art. So this week's episode is launched off week 17 in the book, which is kind of the first time where I prompt the readers and listeners to carve out time specifically to remember who or what's been lost, but also to honor that there's a new relationship that's been formed over the last 17 weeks, whether we like it or not. And so we had the relationship we had with someone maybe, but now there is still a relationship that's very much live in terms of how we connect to them, their belongings, their memory, anything that reminds us of them. And in some ways that can be depressing, but can also be like a really cool gift of like, what's my relationship now like with my brother or my dad? And I find, especially through music, through art, through things that reminds me of them, that it is my way of spending time, with people that I've lost. And I mean, you're covered in art, literally. We don't just have to talk about music today, because, one of the things I offer for them to do is just to like, to literally carve out time to listen to one song they might have been avoiding that reminds them of their loss or their grief. But, anything, in terms of grief transforming into art or art being used to help with your grief. I just like, anybody watching this on YouTube can see that Drew is covered in art. He has permanently painted his body with the coolest tattoos by some badass tattoo artist in Milan, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
But yeah, so you're obviously no stranger to this idea of weaving that literally into your life. And one of the reasons that I only have one tattoo, fun fact for everyone listening, and I purposely put it on my back, one, because I used to be an anal perfectionist and I thought I would want to wash it off if I could see it like front facing in a mirror at any time. But also because I didn't know how much I wanted to be reminded. My tattoo is the longitude and latitude of the last place my family was all with my brother, and both my sisters
Mm.
have it as well. And so it's sort of like our, if found, return home thing too, even though you'd be returning us to somebody else who lives there now. But But yeah, so it's like it's very special to me, but like I was not in a place when I got my first tattoo. See, I said first, warming up to a second, to be reminded of it all the time and what it meant. I wanted to have it, but not have it like sort of in my face. And I did similar things with music and movies and things that reminded me especially of my dad after his passing.
What's the question?
So there's no question. I'm just really like
I
interested
have one
in your
actually for
take
you.
on this. This always happens. This always
Uh-huh.
happens. Okay, you get
What would be
one.
your second tattoo?
Ooh, okay, I like this question. So, as you probably know, my favorite quote of all time is it's in the book. It's the passage from the Benjamin Button film.
Mhm.
For what it's worth, it's never too early or too late. That whole passage. And I'll share it in the script notes. But what I've wanted for a long time, which may shift now, but the page number on the original screenplay that is written on, because it reminds me of who I am as a screenwriter and a writer. But there's also this
Mm,
interesting thing where F. Scott Fitzgerald gets credited for that quote a lot, and it's not his, it's Eric Roth, the screenwriters. And so there's something about that I just like love because it's sort of like who you really are, like and how I translate story. The truest for me is through screenwriting and through my love of film, so it's like that reminder, but then the message of it ties into my entire grief process enough that I wanted to like give a page of it in the book, for people to, but it's just my constant reminder. So I just want like, and I am going to put it somewhere where I can see it, somewhere on the front, but I just want that page number, and nobody will really know what it means, but I know exactly what it means. And for me, it's sort of similar to how you, with one gesture, you can connect to like a meditative state, like that sort of. It
yeah.
just reminds me of why I'm here, that we can always start again. It's just like courage to keep going. But but I am like my older sister is covered in tattoos like you. She got her first one at 16. I think 18. My mom made her literally have the picture of what she wanted on a bulletin board for 2 years. And when she turned 18, she could have it. And then it started there and it like never ended. And I was like the complete opposite. So I've like had this mental picture of this page number for like 10 years. And now I'm just
Mm.
contemplating, do I use the page number of my first book where that's on a page in my book, or do I use the screenplay? But that's the other one. To give you an idea of how I used to stand on tattoos, when my sister has a tattoo on her body for every single one of us, and when she called me and said, it's your turn, like this is your space, what do you want? I said, I want the skin rights, meaning I don't want you to put anything on my space. It's like, I don't
Mm.
want one. I just want like there to be nothing. And she's just like, no, that's not happening. So either pick something or this is going on next week. But I don't know. For me, it's, you can get into the therapy of this, but that the permanence of that is just like it's wild to me. I think one of the most courageous things you can do is like your arms right now. Like that is there every day. It is now your skin.
Well, it's interesting. I think that there is some psychology I'd like to dig into, but not to analyze you, just to play me and you off of each other.
Mhm.
So even as you're talking about some of the things that you gravitated towards in your losses, whether that be song or art of some sort, and that there was seemingly like some kind of resistance to experiencing it right away or giving it some space or only wanting to look at it at certain times, and including even this patch of skin. It's like, I want to make sure that that's controlled by
Mhm.
me in a sense. I think I go to that well regularly, often, and possibly more of the overindulger
Mm.
than the resistance. And I think this might be, we've played with the Enneagram a little bit. This might be the Enneagram 4 in me. And for those who don't know, the Enneagram is a personality profile, and the 4 tends to be marked at birth at some level with death. They're they're comfortable in it. They don't really have the same resistances to talking about it or sitting in it, and that's a bit why I love going for intensity of even darkness. Like before I go to bed, I don't watch comedy. I need to watch like a documentary on serial killers or Breaking Bad. I need something intense to almost chill me out.
Mm.
There's this recognition of possible chaos and hardship that I think almost acts as a nullifier when I'm around it. And so I think the arms, the legs, the tattoos that I have on my body, the art that I have in my apartment, I collect things from all over the world, but I also, even the art that I have commissioned, because I've had some art commissioned, tends to have some deep heaviness in it.
Mm.
And that actually makes me feel more known and understood and comforted than it does remind me of loss. So maybe that's maybe that's even why our friendship has the fun nature it does, because I think you and I in our friendship can jump in and out of heaviness to fun. And I think the thing that I've gotten better and better at is I've always had fun, but I think playing in conversation more. And I'm using that word playing very specifically. I don't mean like playing with words, but playing, having fun with it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I love that, because the way that you're describing it, like exactly what you're describing is sort of what I would describe as like a friend who gets it, which like you just kind of made the metaphor for the type of art that you're attracted to. It's the same sort of thing where because we both get it and we both know grief, we don't have to
Mm.
explain it to each other, and we can sort of exist and almost get to, like you said, that playfulness a lot faster, because there's the safety in knowing that the other person, that it's like sort of reflected and it's there, so it doesn't have to be. And I can totally see that in certain pieces of art that, I often talk about the thing that always wanted me to get into film is being very young and something happening on screen and just kind of taking this deep breath and being like, I don't know who, but somewhere gets it. And it's not what they said. It's just, I
Mm-hmm.
know that whoever wrote this, like, gets it. And
Yeah.
it's just that little mirror, like in the things that you surround yourself with and the type of art that you like, that can, like, a lot of people looking in might say, like, you don't need that right now. Like, that's dark, that's heavy. But there's something about being able to check in that way, even if it is through art. So it's not so head on. And one thing I like about that, unlike a friend who gets it, is it doesn't have to talk back to you. You can be sitting
Yeah.
there saturated in sound. You can stare at a painting. You can watch a film and feel connected and understood without having to get analytical or conversational about it. Like, it's within your own safety of, it's really where there's certain songs that, like, that's me spending 3 minutes with someone I've lost, or even grieving like a certain time of my life. Like, I'll be sitting there smiling, I'll be sitting there crying, whatever it is, but nothing gets said. It doesn't get explained to any other living being. And it's just sort of, it's being my friend who gets it in that moment. So I love that idea. And like for people to sort of start to seek out, what that truly is for them, because we get a lot of advice that, like, we should go do quote unquote happy things, or things that, like, aren't going to connect to our grief or our sadness, or, those sorts of things. And sometimes weirdly, the thing that we crave and that we need the most is that understanding without having to, like, go into it, to see that mirror.
Yeah. I mean, grief is our common heritage. And when you go through enough of it, or you have some heavy doses of it, where you can't push it away, that you can't protest it anymore, you have to give in and be a participator in it. Most of us are not seeking it out. It's an unsought out experience to even learn. And so I'd say that when we get into that place, often what we're first turning to is art. And so we've heard it before, right? There's nothing new under the sun. From Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, Solomon's words, right? Old Testament shit. I'm not saying anything new. You're not saying anything new. It's just the voice in which it's said. And we're looking for these artists, even if they're podcasters or writers, to just speak in the language that we need to hear. And your voices are not the same as my voices. But the beautiful thing is there's enough people writing about the same thing over and over again in different ways that we get to be known when we need it the most. And then we get to look at those people and say, they were brave and they were ambitious towards grief and they were complicit in the process. And that helped them through their hardest times in life. That's the beautiful thing about art.
Yeah. And that's such a beautiful thing because like I just remember like sort of wanting to get away from all that stuff because like it just reminded me. And so there's this part of my brain, like as a safety mechanism, trying to avoid anything that was going, yeah, that is what happened. That is how you feel. This is, grief is a real thing. And so it's like these silent, like sort of like nods, like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like the Jeep wave. We need like a grief wave or something. But like, like in art, there's these silent nods to like, yeah, it is real. It's there with you all the time. It's going to show up when it shows up kind of thing. And it's like this sort of unspoken. Gosh, I'm so jealous when my sister drives around in her Jeep Wrangler and just everybody does that wave. I'm like, I want a car that comes with a wave, but I got one. It's called grief.
I don't want anybody annoying me while I'm driving. I have a Jeep. Luckily, it's a Cherokee.
You
I don't have
do?
to deal with that shit. It's a Cherokee. I don't have like a Jeep where
What, the
they do the wave
Cherokees aren't
thing.
allowed to do the wave?
No, the boxed Jeeps are the ones who do the waves. Everybody else
Wow.
is just regular people.
It's 2023. We
But
got to open up the wave to all Jeep owners.
I don't want them interfering with my experience on the road by bothering me. Now, I have nothing else to say. That
Okay,
was
well,
it.
since as a
Yeah.
transition, if there was a grief wave, what would it look like, Drew?
I did have something to say. Let me say something here.
Okay,
I knew I had something and I lost it and then I got
there's
it
always
back.
something.
I know. So you're a part of this group that I'm doing.
Mm.
And the group is exploration of grief and loss. And it's funny because as I've been working through some of the writers that are helping, not alive writers, but dead writers who are helping me in this process, I'm finding that, and I did not know this about 2 out of the 3, that 3 of the main voices, one died at 42, one died at 49, and then the one that I knew had passed away died at 46. And there's something powerful in their voices that found me when I needed them, and I didn't know their backstories. I didn't know that they had been lost. But they are those voices that I needed to hear at specific times in my life. And now I'm getting to play out a very difficult thing for me, which is I've always compared myself to just about everybody.
Mm.
And a lot of times I come up short, especially when it's with writers. And these 3 folks who have left right around the time that I'm starting my book, there's this beautiful kind of transition or almost passing the baton that I'm experiencing. And also a nod and a laugh at all of the comparing I've done. That each one speaks to the comparing and says, watch out for that. It's going to keep you from doing the thing you want to do. And each of them left early, having done some very significant work. And so there is a grieving I've done of even letting go of that part of me that wants to compare and contrast to stay safe, to stay not reaching my potential. And all of these characters are folks who have left early, who didn't get to complete more and more work. So I don't know. I just felt like that was an appropriate place to place this with the idea of these artists who really sunk into their work, but then thank God they did. And they did it with some immediacy because they didn't know that they were going to go so early.
I love that. And for my family and friends that are listening, this is the man you're listening to that you currently hate, who has had you write a eulogy for me while I'm still living in the past 2 weeks as part of our group exercises. This is the guy. This is the guy, which, is very interesting that it's something that nobody wants to do, but there is this sort of element around like practicing death. And I do think, without going like deep into that rabbit hole, practicing dealing with death, like getting intimate with it, I do think that, identifying which art connects us to that most deeply, and at least
Mm,
being willing to interact with that art, like you said, like, yeah, it's
yeah.
a little head on to write a eulogy for yourself or for someone who's still living. Yes, that's a certain type of guy, the two of us, that are seeking that, as you said earlier. But then there is this, like, sort of what I would call like the safe play of this, where it's like, yeah, it's a little bit edgy, it's a little bit raw, it hits the nerve, and how can I be with that? And how can I still be with that existing, within my daily life? It sprinkles into so much, like spending time like through memory and like the sense memory of things, but also like slowly navigating through maybe what we triggering, or that kind of stuff as well. But I find that music specifically, and I know you do too, can have such like a powerful impact, and it has like sort of this one degree of separation while feeling like completely connected, um
Hmm.
to to what you're feeling. So I mean, I want you to at least talk for a minute about the songs that saved your life. I mean, just a minute, because I
Yeah,
love
I
it. I
will.
want everyone to look up your stuff on it. And also, well, I'm thinking of that, you mentioned the Enneagrams, and if anybody is interested in that or interested in learning what their Enneagram is, look to Drew's stuff, because he's doing the thing over there on that too.
On the YouTubes. Yeah. So the songs that save your life is the first, outside of my career as a therapist and going back to grad school, but I would say even more than that, was the first creative uh, piece of work that I gave myself to fully, to the point where I felt at somewhere along the way that I'd rather die than this not to happen. Like if I
Hmm.
got the choice to like do this and die, I would do it. And I think it's a little hyperbolic, but I had given myself fully to it. The idea is that I would be the host of a show that explored someone's song that saved their life. In a sense, the song that got them through the hardest time, whether that's divorce or a loss of life in their family, or their own life that they wanted to lose. So that that the first guest was DMC from Run DMC. It was the pilot episode, and he was literally wanting to commit suicide and heard
Mm.
a song by Sarah McLachlan. But we did a couple episodes to just proof of concept. I got signed by Sony Records. They were supposed to help get this thing made. And for 3 years, we just couldn't sell it. The
Mm.
Sony and myself and my brother, who was the co-creator, we just couldn't get it sold. And there could be a number of reasons for that. I don't want to go into them, but I never gave up on it. And I think when we met each other in Mexico, I was still wrestling with whether to fully grieve it and let it go or keep fighting for it. And every time I wanted to let it go, someone else got into the mix and stirred my heart up again and got me excited. And so there was this constant like pulling back and then get sucked back in. It
Mm.
felt very much like Godfather 3. Like just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. And
I
to
hate
the
that I was
point
going to call
where,
that a Sopranos quote, just so you know, because I
yeah,
think
yeah,
of it from
well,
Sopranos because of my age.
right. Um, they do replicate that over and
Yeah,
over again
he
there.
does.
But
Yeah.
even to this last time where I just said I had a producer. So we left Sony. We we did this episode with DMC, which again was another serendipitous, weird moment where it felt like there's no way this could happen other than someone from on high was just putting people in each other's way.
Mm.
And we tried to sell it, and it got rejected over and over again. And I essentially had 6 or 7 years of rejection with this, and I'm proud of myself for keeping on going. But when I got back from Mexico the last time, which was not too many months ago, I have a producer in New York and a producer in LA who are both connected to the music world, who took this on and tried to pitch it to a bunch of people, and they got rejected a bunch of times. And ultimately, the one guy who believes in it almost as much as I do came to me and he was like, I got to let this go. I've got too much work. I'm just hitting walls on this. And so we had never put it out on YouTube because of music rights. I didn't want to get it pulled off, but I've since found out that as long as you're not making money off of it, it's pretty much okay. And so I put it up there. not much traction, but TikTok kind of did a thing
Mm.
and people got excited about it. We're like, you can't let this go. And I got revved up again. And I'm in that point where I'm still at that space going, I think I need to, something loud needs to happen for me to get back involved in this. I have other things I want to do. But it was an 8-year cycle of incredible amount of daily grief
Mm.
and then some major griefs, including this last one, which was almost like, you know, putting it down into the grave, but still not putting the dirt on top.
It ain't
And
over. That thing's a
yeah,
vampire.
right. So I think you and I, when I shared it with you, you connected with it, and you were another character who was like, I got somebody who you should meet, and then they should.
Oh, dude, even when you're talking about it right now, I'm literally under the screen writing 2 new ideas I have of how to freaking revive and defibrillate this thing again because I love it so much. And I want to thank you so much for talking about it because it seems weirdly easier on this show for people, especially like guest experts and friends, like to talk about physical death, because it's like it isn't, it's not weirdly, it's not as personal to their own, success, career journey, like all that stuff. But like the majority of people that I talk to and I find in daily life are feeling all the things I felt around these physical deaths, around things like this, their career babies, their, like these things that mean so much to them. But I just love this because one, it just highlights the meaningful loss of anything part of grief, which it doesn't have to be losing a person in the way that you're describing this. And I think everyone, whether they're saying it out loud or not, like we're talking about, like listening to a certain song sort of gives you permission. As you talk about that, everyone has their version of that,
Yeah,
on some scale. It may not be a TV show that, like, the people connected to are still like trying to, because everyone, I want to watch it. And like, there's just so many ways that I can think about it. And I just really resonate with how music, when nothing else had the power to do that, there was just this point where like all there was left was what could I still connect to? And for me, at my darkest moment, that was music. And I'm never gonna say on air what song that I listened to 24 hours a day when I was, in my own suicidal moment. But it's just interesting how it just comes down to that one thing. And for whatever reason, it's just the only thing that you can rely on. So I just think it's such a cool project. It's not over. It's never over. It's going to be Cher, cockroaches, and this show after the end of the world. It's not over, man. You heard it from me.
yeah,
Um, because it just sparks so much every time, and there's so many ways for it to live. And right now, it's living in this conversation. And I'm telling you, the people that hear that, and it
mhm.
gets them thinking about the song that saved their life, or how music can play a huge role in them being a part of their own grief and taking back some agency in that. It's dope. And so thank you for that. I had to like just drive this into the bottom of Act Two as a screenwriter so that we could climb a little hill and have fun on the way out. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, like I just when you didn't share about any physical death in the beginning of the episode, which I think people just feel like they have to or tempted to do it in the beginning, when I leave it very purposely, honor the journey to see what comes out. I was like, well, let's talk about the other kind of grief that shows up for people all
Can I
the time.
can I jump on that? I mean, it has been my goal in my career to help people see this, the small to major, the ordinary everyday stuff to the extreme losses. And this project for me, it's interesting because it started at 36 and now I'm 44. So it has been with me during 5 or 6 other grieving transitions. The transition in the second half of life is a radical one for many people.
Mm.
So to turn over past that 40 point, and that this thing came with me from the day it started, I had to start grieving so much because you and I both know that in that industry, the percentage of things that make it
Mm-hmm.
are so small. And no matter how many people said right away when I told them the concept, I have a song and I have a story behind the song.
Mm-hmm.
I don't meet many people who don't instantly have a song that got them through a tough time. And then to have Sony get involved and then to have just everybody kind of like be on it, but still knowing I live in a city in which there is thousands of people trying to make entertainment work and getting rejected every day. I was not a fool in it. And so there was all these griefs happening with this major grief going on while my whole kind of transition in the second half of life was going on. So I think when I look back, it was a transitionary component into that. It heightened my awareness of my aging process. And it kind of incited the need to get really good at grief so that I could help so many people along the way, friends and clients and family, transition in their own way. And so I'm a guy who actually thinks way more about the small losses or the everyday losses or the career losses than I do about the major ones. And I think that's because it's sometimes easier to teach people that way as well.
Yeah, that really resonates. And I know personally, and I hope that people listening feel this way too, like that. For me, everything you just said just reminded me so much to zoom out. There's something so special about this conversation happening today where I'm at in my own journey, like, even that we brought up the 10-year distance between us. And, that's just everything you're saying right now. For me, I've just been so focused on like what is and isn't happening right now in this moment. And then when I hear you talk about things like this, it's just like, dude, zoom out. Like some of these things are a 10, 12-year process. Like you've heard this story over and over again of like ongoing. And it's that thing, the number one thing that I would say to anyone, and I try to remind people is like when I say like, what is honoring grief? Like it sounds like a weird tagline, but like removing the belief that there was a result, like that some result is going to come and you're going to be able to either put this away or check it off or be done with it. And it's just like, I don't know. I know that I needed that reminder right now. Like zoom out, dude. You're 34. Like it's not over. It's not begun. It's all happened and it hasn't happened yet. Like just, you know what I mean? Like just, whew. And like,
Well,
and honor those everyday losses, like
yeah,
allow them to be without the finality of it. Like I'm honoring this because it's like, it's definitely over, or, you know what I mean?
yep.
Like this sort of this safety mechanism of trying to put it away, but it's like, can you honor an open wound? Like that's what I'm like being reminded
Oh
of
yeah,
right now. And that's a lot harder to do.
it is. Well, and I think in this specific one, I think both of us are highly aware that that show makes it. We might have never met. If we did meet, you'd have way more people watching this than will. That sometimes when I'm on podcasts without the thing, without the book, without the show. I've been on a lot of podcasts because I connect well with people. But the influence that comes with some of the successes has to be grieved regularly for me. That to know that someone watching this right now might be touched in a way, and it doesn't need to have 100,000 people listening, but that there's that part of me that thinks, fuck, if that show made it and I had more and more influence in the world, what that could look like. It's almost like, the Gollum and the Precious, like, the Precious, But to just stay present and go, man, I got to meet a person who's going to be with me for life as a friend. And we're just chatting about loss. And what if the thing did happen and I didn't get to meet Addison? And what if somebody who's going to hear this might not have been affected because the life path was different? But that's worthy too. The what ifs, and that's the bargaining part of grief where we have to go, fuck, like we want the thing to look different than it is. And if we stay there and we don't cycle through it, we get stuck to what could be. Oh,
Mm. I love,
brutal.
yeah, no, and I'm just grateful because very few people will get on and really say that stuff. And I know everybody like just God, you just really resonate with that one. This one, is gonna go beyond Grief Club and just be something that's so applicable to just like anyone who's, got a dream of some sort and trying to put that little bit of them out there. And, to me, it's so funny. I hear you say that it's so easy to be the other guy and be like, what are you talking about? You are the guy. You do influence so many people, like, but it's all just coming full circle with what you were saying about other people's art and passing the baton. And there's just no way to know like when that happens and how far you'll go and who will take it from there or, what comes to life and what doesn't. But it's just like, you just realize like how much of an influence people have without sort of like realizing because we're always sort of measuring to that like that huge appeal in that way. But and I guess it's a little difficult for me because I've seen the show. It has changed my life. It has connected me. I'm one of the few people who's got to watch, the pilot. So for me, it's like it already did, and it's like, oh yeah, like let's get that to more people, however that distills and whatever that message is. You've got so much
Mm-hmm.
cooking right now that I like can't wait because you're saying that now, but like I just like I know in a year and a half people are going to be looking for this episode. And it might hit later and it does. That stuff happens all the time. Like these
Yeah.
little sound bites and these like sort of I think of what was that movie where they found like the alien records basically, like the sound bites. Like it stays. Like I don't
I
know,
don't watch
when
those
this
kind of
episode
movies,
might like
Addison.
hit. I don't either. That's why I couldn't describe it to you. All right. So people are listening. We're
Yeah.
gonna do something
Let's hope
fun.
they still are.
We're gonna do a rapid fire game where we're gonna build a Drew playlist and people listening can do it now. You can go back and listen to this, clock the time. I'm gonna ask Drew a bunch of questions that will naturally build a playlist for him to get more connected to himself and just to kind of learn a little bit about himself along the way. So I don't know if you're doing this on the cuff, if you thought about this at all. I
Thought
definitely
about this a little bit. So can let me ask you a question. Do we have
yeah,
time
sure.
that I can add a sentence for each song?
Yes, one sentence.
All right.
One.
I'll try to be restrained.
Um, and only because it will gift the listener time to write theirs down. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Track one. What's a song that always puts you in a good mood?
Planet Earth 2. You know this with David Attenborough?
Mm-hmm.
The theme song is called Sweet, Suite. It to me is probably the most beautiful song I've ever heard written. And it's Hans Zimmer
Mm.
and a couple other people. It will make me cry and feel the most gratitude probably 10% of the time I listen to it. Always gratitude. Tears 10%.
I love that. I'm gonna do this rapid fire with you. I'm gonna put the Jurassic Park theme song in there, no matter what. I don't know
Awesome.
when I hear that. And I play it every time I drive down the canyon to the ocean, through Malibu. Track two. What's a song that makes you feel safe?
Mm. You didn't tell me that one beforehand. Makes me feel safe. There is a song by Sigur Rós called Saglapur. Saeglopur. It feels like a song that makes me know that there is momentum, but also purpose and reason for being here. That kind of
Hmm.
safety.
I'm gonna say Hopeless Wanderer, Mumford and Sons.
Mm.
Because I played, it's actually weird because was a time when I didn't feel safe, but I played that album so much that now it reminds me that clearly I was being held and safe. Um, Track three, what's a song that reminds you of a loved one?
Uh, Push by The Cure reminds me of my brother, who is a mentor and just a good friend.
I'm gonna say Walking in Memphis reminds me of my brother. Okay, track 5. What's a song that helps you honor sadness or grief?
I'm gonna tell you this because you had people write your eulogy, and I got to read them. So in this group, people are sending them to me, and then I'm going to read out loud to Addison and other group members as they have theirs sent in. So these people are writing a eulogy to them, and I was listening. I was reading in a cafe, and I was listening to this song while I did it. And it's also Sigur Rós, and it's called Untitled Number 3.
Hmm. Mine is going to be Elephant by Rachel Yamagata. Um, track 6. What's a song that makes you want to dance?
Aha, Take on Me, baby. Let me
It
get
makes
my
you want to
shoes
dance.
on.
I'm gonna just say I want to dance with somebody, Whitney Houston. But also, what's the Elton John Dua Lipa song? Because now, ever since we made that Baja memory, I can't not want to get up and dance. Track 7.
I
What's a
can't.
song that reminds you of good
Was it
times?
Tiny Dancer?
Yeah. No. That's the new one with Britney. It's
Sorry.
what is it? Cold something. Elton's gonna listen
Yeah.
to this. I know Elton
Yeah,
listens to
yeah.
this. He's gonna be very disappointed in both of us. Track 7. What's a song that reminds you of good times with someone you lost?
Big Ship by Brian Eno. It's the song that I play every time I take mushrooms and or psychedelics.
Mm. I'm gonna
Other psychedelics.
say Knock Three Times, Tony, Orlando, and Don, my dad belting that out, like driving around and
Wow.
embarrassing the shit out of us. But if we didn't do like the knocks or the taps, it was over.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Crucial for allowance, those knocks and those taps. And you can tell because I'm smiling trying to talk about it. Track 8. What's a song that always helps you work out?
Oh, Battleborn by the Killers.
Oh, I love the Killers.
Mhm.
This is so lame. Maybe it's not, but Lose Yourself by Eminem. Like when I really need to
I don't
when
think
I
that's
really
lame.
need to kick it, Eminem is like people wouldn't think that, but yeah. That
No, I like that.
yeah.
I was gonna go with that or Busta Rhymes.
Hmm.
New York's. I think it's called New York City shit.
So wait,
Yeah, New York shit.
9.
New York shit.
No, I didn't ask this. Yeah. So what's the song that has saved your life?
I actually brought this up, I think, in the beginning, which was Before It All Ends by Kent.
Hmm. I love that.
But secondarily, Pictures of You by Cure.
I love that.
That's my favorite song of all time, Pictures of You.
Skipping that one, because I'm going to be a featured guest on the TV show when it gets lit, and I can't have spoiler alerts. Number 9, what's a song? Oh, what's a song that inspires you?
Um, mm, gosh. I've been listening to this band, the Jezebels. For most of my life, I've resisted listening to female singers. It just didn't resonate as much. And last year, I've been absorbed in female leads. And the Jezebels have this song, Time to Dance, which just, it's been inspiring me constantly.
I love that. If I'm being honest, I think like Dog Days Are Over by Florence and the Machine, like that song
I love
just
that song.
gets me doing the damn thing.
Yeah.
And definitely some weird dancing that Hank, my dog, has witnessed from that.
Mhm.
Track number 11. What's a song that would instantly help you cry and release blocked emotions?
Another Sigur Rós. Gosh, Vaka, Vaka. It's just heavenly.
I'm Only the Good Die Young by Queen.
Mm.
It's my brother's funeral song, and it was sang live, and it's just fucking love that song. What's a song that makes you feel like a teenager? Track 12.
What you want by Beastie Boys.
I love that. What
Yeah.
is that? What's my age again? Blink 182. Like instant portal.
Uh-huh.
And finally, What's track 13? What's a song that makes you feel like a kid again? Playing outside, the good times.
For some reason, the first like rock and not like outside of Beatles or whatever, but I think the first song I really remember being like a current song was "We Built This City" by Starship. We built this
I love
city.
that song.
Oh, it's so cheesy, but it's for some
So
reason I remember
good.
being in the back of my parents' car and it being on the radio, and it just must have like that stuff that the brain calculates and downloads easily when you're a kid in music.
What's the song that we used to like make my uncle play it when we jump off the diving board? We called it the roller coaster song, but is that what it's called? The one that like sounds like, is it Magic Carpet Ride that sounds like a roller coaster at the beginning and then I don't know
You
why.
got me,
We called it the
Addison.
diving board song.
You
I'll
got me.
figure out. I'll figure out what
I
it
have
is.
no idea what you're talking about.
Oh my God. All right. Well, we have to start to wind this thing down, but we're not doing that without talking about finding the funny. So Drew, where do you find the funny?
You know that I have a lot of time spent with Seinfeld. I did the math once of how often I watch that show or have in my life, and I think it's taken up a full year.
No.
Because it's something I put on all the time to just kind of have in the background. And
I
I
mean,
did the math based on showtime and how many times I've probably watched each episode and how many episodes there are. And then I included Curb Your Enthusiasm into that and some of interviews that I've heard by Seinfeld and Larry David. And I think it equals up to about a year of my life, which is shameful and also liberating.
impressive. And like, at least you're doing like the great. I'm sure other people could add up a year of their life in shows that they would never admit is a year of their life. At least
I
it's
don't know.
Seinfeld. Like at least, it's brilliant.
Some would question it, but not me.
It's got that. All right, my man. Where can people find you?
YouTube, they can find that episode of Songs That Save Your Life that we were talking about with DMC from Run DMC, and all of my Enneagram content. If you're interested in the Enneagram, it's just Drew Newkirk on YouTube. And then my Instagram has an unfortunate long name, Drew Newkirk Psychotherapy, which I should have changed, but it was on all of my YouTubes. So like people are coming from YouTube to there, and now it's stuck.
It's too late. You're a star, kid. Can't change it now.
What do I do now?
It's
Except
caught
just
on.
do this when I talk about the name.
All right, great. And I'm going to let you have the last word. I'm going to check out with my one word being grateful, checking out with one word.
Friendship.
Thanks, dude. We'll see you soon.
Love you, man.
Well, Grief Club, that's the show. If you enjoyed it, please let us know by liking and leaving a review. This will help as many people who may need what we're talking about find it the fastest. Remember to honor the journey, and when that gets tough, find the funny.